The email hit my inbox like a brick through a window. Villa Pond maintenance scheduled. I was sipping coffee in a cramped Lisbon cafe. 6,000 miles from home. When I read it. By the time I landed back in Oakridge, my serene koi pond me pride. My sanctuary was a barren crater of cracked mud. And Karen, the HOA tyrant, was grinning like she'd just won the lottery. For years, Karen had ruled our gated community like a petty dictator in a tacky muumuu. Her voice, a nasal screech, could curdle milk. And her self-appointed mission was to enforce every HOA rule with the zeal of a medieval inquisitor. She'd fine you for a mailbox tilted a degree off-center, lecture you for planting tulips instead of roses, and once sent a cease and desist to a kid for flying a kite too high. Karen wasn't just a nuisance, she was a walking caricature of entitlement. Her bloated ego matched only by her disdain for anyone who dared breathe differently. I'd been overseas for 3 months, consulting on a renewable energy project in Portugal. My villa, a modest but elegant retreat, was my haven from the chaos of work. The pond, teeming with golden koi and fringed with lilies, was its heart. I'd spent years perfecting it, balancing the ecosystem, even naming the fish hero, Sakura, and little Momo, who'd nip at your fingers if you dangled them too long. Karen knew this. She'd eyed my pond for years, muttering about non-compliant water features and community aesthetics. I'd ignored her, assuming her threats were just hot air. Big mistake. When I pulled into the driveway, jet-lagged and disoriented, the sight of my pond empty, desolate, the koi gone felt like a punch to the gut. The air stank of damp earth and betrayal. My neighbor, Sam, a wiry retiree with a penchant for gardening, was waiting for me, his face grim. Karen did this, he said, handing me a crumpled HOA notice. Said your pond was a health hazard. She had it drained while you were gone. Claimed the board voted on it. I stared at the notice, my hand shaking. No vote had happened. Karen had bullied the board into submission, forging signatures and bypassing protocol. Sam filled me in. She'd hired a crew to pump out the water, claiming mosquito risks, and sold my koi to a pet store for community funds. My fish, my little Momo, were gone. I felt sick, not just from loss, but from the sheer audacity of her power grab. I wasn't alone in my rage. Sam had his own Karen storage fined him $500 for a non-regulation rosebush. Maria, the single mom across the street, had been slapped with a lien for parking her car an inch over her driveway line. Even quiet Mr. Chun, who'd lived here for decades, had been harassed over his unapproved birdhouse. Karen's reign of terror had united us, a ragtag resistance of fed-up neighbors. We met that night in Sam's garage, whispering like conspirators in a war zone. We can't let her get away with this, Maria said, her voice trembling but fierce. She's not just a bullish thief. She thinks she's untouchable, I said, my mind racing. But she's sloppy. That fake vote, the forged signature's it's fraud. We just need proof. Sam leaned forward, his eyes glinting. And I know where to get it. Our plan was simple but surgical. Karen's power rested on her control of the HOA board, but her Achilles heel was her arrogance. She kept records sloppy, incriminating once in her garage office, a shrine to her ego lined with tacky inspirational posters. Sam, who'd once fixed her lawnmower, knew she never locked the side door. We didn't need to break in. We just needed to look. Under cover of night, Sam and I slipped into her garage. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and cheap perfume. Her desk was a chaos of papers, receipts, emails, and jackpot, a notebook with board meeting notes. There it was. In Karen's loopy scrawl, pond vote passed unanimously, override dissenters. No signatures. No minutes. Just her word. We snapped photos, our hearts pounding, and slipped out undetected. The next morning, we called an emergency HOA meeting. Karen strutted in, expecting another chance to flex her authority. The room was packed, neighbors I hadn't seen in years, all nursing their own grudges. I stood, holding up my phone with the damning evidence projected on a screen. Gasps rippled through the crowd as I read her notes aloud. Karen's face turned the color of her garish lipstick. "This is slander," she shrieked, jabbing a manicured finger at me. "You're jealous of my leadership." "Leadership?" Maria shot back. "You stole his fish. Karen, you forged documents. You're done." The room erupted in shouts, years of pent-up frustration boiling over. Karen tried to gavel us into silence, but the tide had turned. Mr. Chun, usually silent, stood and recounted how she'd threatened to evict him over his birdhouse. Sam detailed the rosebush saga. One by one, neighbors spoke, their voices raw with anger and relief. Karen's smug mask cracked, her eyes darting like a cornered animal's. But we weren't done. The HOA's crown jewel was the ornamental bridge over the community creek, a vanity project Karen had spearheaded, funded by our dues. She'd named it Karen's Crossing. Naturally. It was her legacy, her throne, and it was built on land with shaky permits. Sam, a retired surveyor, had done some digging. The bridge violated county zoning laws. Karen had bribed a contractor to skip inspections. One call to the county, backed by our evidence, and the bridge was slated for demolition. The day the wrecking crew arrived, Karen stood by the creek, sobbing as her precious bridge crumbled. Neighbors gathered, not to gloat, but to witness justice. The county fined the HOA, but we voted to redirect the penalty to Karen personally. She was ousted as president, her fines piling up faster than her excuses. Rumors spread she was selling her house to cover the costs. I rebuilt my pond, deeper and grander, with new koi I named after my neighbors Sam, Maria, Chun. The community felt lighter, like a storm had passed. We'd learned something vital. Bullies like Karen thrive on silence, but they crumble when you shine a light on their deeds. Our victory wasn't just about a pond or a bridge, it was about reclaiming our home, our dignity, from someone who thought she could take it all. As I sat by my pond, watching the koi glide under the moonlight, I realized Karen's greatest crime wasn't draining the water. It was underestimating us. She thought we'd stay quiet, divided, cowed. But we weren't just neighbors, we were a community. And we'd fought back, not with her petty cruelty, but with truth and unity. The end.